Hello, my friends. I'm Rick, and this is your seat at the table. And we're talking all things Battletech, Mech Warrior, saw. We cannot talk about the greater scheme of the politics and the memes and the reasons why, how the Battletech universe functions and operates without discussing Comstar. And that's what we're going to do here. This is all, in some essences, Comstar is the actual boogeyman or the bad guys or the villains of the Battletech universe in a nutshell. These are this pseudo-religious remnant of the Star League that has elements within it whose intense goal is to somehow bring the entire inner sphere, the entire human population of known space together under their banner and their wise and benevolent leadership. They themselves do not contain or control vast series of planets or systems, although their primary homestead is Terra itself, the solar system. They also have a sporadic grouping of small outposts and things like this out in the deep periphery. For the most part, their primary means of being viable, important, and control is that they maintain and operate and maintain the vast hyperspace generator network that allows everyone in the inner sphere to communicate. Everything from sending grandma a message to ordering business parts for your whatever to discussing plots and intrigue and or the local fashions with other planets and other people across space. Another portion is that they field and maintain the Comstar Bill. This is the one solid, as of 3025, the one solid monetary substance that's accepted everywhere in the inner sphere and for the most part beyond the inner sphere, where economy and money actually has value. Comstar's bill is 100. Everything else is 100%. Everything else is based off of the value. So a Karita bill might be a house bill for Karita might be only valued at 80% of a Comstar bill, etc., and so on, that kind of thing. And the third is their ability and to negotiate and quote act as a neutral, unbiased party to allow others to, I don't want to say mediate or to come to some kind of diplomatic substance, some kind of settlement or what have you, even though that's actually a facade. And we're going to find out all about Comstar here and what we have going on. I have lots of personal opinions on them. I try not to dominate them in my conversation at this point. Let's see. This book was published in 1992 by the FASA Corporation, right? So what we have here is the History of Comstar, Comstar's classified report. Classified documents, historical briefing for use by Comstar personnel rank acolyte or higher as part of our Blessed Order's Reformation. Primus Moria authorizes document covering the development of our order from the fall of the Star League to the current schism resulting in the Word of Blake organization. This document provides the facts of each premise rise and fall, recounts Comstar's effort to bring Jerome Blake's vision to the inner sphere, and illuminates the missteps that certain members have made over the years. Our Blessed Order's hopes and concerns for the future and understanding of the events within the Word of Blake and the Free Worlds League appear in a separate section at the end of this document. All right. Introduction. Comstar is dedicated to fulfilling a single divine mission, preserving the glorious Star League technological legacy in order to prevent a new dark age. Founded in 2788 by the blessed Jerome Blake, Comstar guards and maintains the hyperpulse generator communications network and other valuable technologies developed during humanity's golden age, guarding the knowledge that might have been lost forever were it not for the foresight of our blessed founder. All right, I'm not going to read the whole thing. So, the rise of Blake, the amorous coup, along the road to Terra, liberation of Terra. So, in a nutshell, Amorous stages his coup, wipes out the Cameron family, and basically brings an end to the Golden Age and to the Star League. Kerensky grinds his way back into the hegemony and then assaults Terra, captures Emrys, and later assassinates him. At this point, things go south. The House Lords start fighting amongst themselves and are not willing to reconstitute the Star League unless they are the one in charge of it. Kerensky then initiates his exodus and takes the remnant majority of the Star League existing military and navy at that point on a long journey that someday eventually returns as what we know as the clans. The last remaining vestige of Star League bureaucracy would be the Star League communications group, and there's a name for it in here. I don't know if I can find it briefly. Yeah, I'm not going to find it without really doing some digging. And so, as a concession, first off, Kerensky assigns Jerome Blake the responsibility to try to maintain this and to preserve what technology and communications and stuff that's important. Because if all the individual houses are allowed to do control their own communications, likelihood of communication breakdown, the next to losing jump capability, losing hyperspace communications amongst all the planets and the primary principles would be devastating, which is what occurs during the actual Dark Age era of the collapse of the later centuries. So we'll get to that at a different point in time. But Jerome Blake, at some point, believes that they have to establish this idea of neutrality first, and to lead by example whenever possible. So they take that somewhat high road mindset to the rest of the inner sphere. Not everybody buys into it. Right, let's see. Meanwhile, Comstar needs a base of operations, and they basically hire some mercenaries and take over Terra. And not making that kind of a fast and sweet, but it's a truth to it. Another concept of thing. Somehow, it's believed among certain elements of Comstar in the beginning that the sheer volume of people in the inner sphere are ignorant morons who are all but one level step away from being savages, and or that after the total devastation of the first succession war that most of the inner sphere is going to end up blasted back to the Stone Age. Comstar takes on this religious mindset. They enact this religious, not a religion-based facade. So they start wearing robes, and they start having rituals and ceremonies for everything they do, and they try to have this mystic belief in order to give themselves more power to the uninitiated and to impress and to dominate pretty much anybody who's gullible. And in their mindset, most people are gullible, and so they really wrap themselves up in this neo religious persona, and to the point where they believe it themselves after the first generation or so. And it's kind of hard to really get your head around it and just how this works to their advantage. Another thing that they began is this thing called the Mercenary Review Board. This was to give another neutral central location for all the houses to be able to operate and function and set a set of parameters and ways to codify and to rank mercenary commands based on their reliability and their size and experience and so on and so forth, and to put somebody in charge, more or less, that's supposed to be not biased in how this stuff works. Right? And it goes on, it says, most people do not realize the Comstar Mercenary Review Board was not formed as a result of some vision of Jerome Blake, but rather the request of the Cronus Combine leader Merle Carita. Winter of 2789, all the great houses in the industry were having problems with mercenary units. They scum off and fled the battle or sought to blackmail their employer for higher fees. Lack of morals and ethics made them undesirable as warriors, that the Combine had little choice but to use them, so on and so forth. So the expansion years. See right here. So, expansion years. Jerome Blake's leadership of Comstar lasted 31 years. During that time, he laid the groundwork that would define the philosophy, operations, and structure of Comstar for centuries to come. One of his deep beliefs was that Comstar must retain its purity by remaining somewhat isolated from the outside world, and he used the organization's bureaucracy and technocracy to accomplish that goal. Any member who discussed even the most mundane technology with outsiders was severely punished and could be expelled from the organization. Being something of a mystic, Blake believed in the decline of civilization was a form of punishment that humanity was suffering for its sins. It's also obvious by this time that the scope of the destruction of the wars being fought around him would eventually destroy civilization completely unless some individual or group undertook to guard precious technological and scientific knowledge. This Jerome Blake considered Comstar's highest purpose the maintenance and preservation of human knowledge at all costs. Thus, Comstar became a haven for all manner of technicians, prospering while the rest of the interstellar society was tearing itself to shreds. During Blake's tenure, Comstar continued to expand its services, improving and upgrading its stations, restoring a regular short-distance mail service to supplement its HPG transmissions. The Comstar letter of credit, or the forerunner of the Sea Bill, had begun to serve as a medium of exchange between both rival and friendly houses, superseding house currencies in the interstellar marketplace. Under Blake's leadership, the First Circuit, now absolute governing body of Comstar, barred all but its own members from its meetings, posed a secret society mentality on its subordinates. The internal security force known as ROM was formed in 2811 to help prevent the leakage of technological information to the outside and to help thwart the defection of Comstar personnel to the successor states. ROM quickly became feared and respected throughout Comstar, punishing not only treason but also doctrinal, or i.e. policy disputes with dispatch and efficiency. 2791, First Circuit created the Comstar Archives branch to document massive displaced population in the inner sphere. Many families became separated because of the ravages of war, and so Comstar organized a gigantic family genetic tracking network to assist in reuniting scattered individuals. Also, the Sol Administration branch was formed to oversee the maintenance of Terra, Venus, and Mars, and the civilian populations of those worlds. You can see where he was heading with this and how it morphed into what it was up until the schism with the War of Blake and the conclusion of the initial clan invasion and Battle of Tukia. We talk about the public image. Creation of Rome, double agents, the Brotherhood divided. Purification, the death of Blake. At some point, the leadership of Comstar came to this conclusion or decided that the only possessors of high technology and knowledge of information in general of the Star League and from those glory days should be Comstar. And this begins this kind of a skullduggery, a pretty insidious series of manipulations and plots across the inner sphere. One, Comstar constantly nudges, pokes, and inspires the various house lords to continue this never-ending struggle amongst themselves for power. The succession wars and the continuation of them, in a large part, are at the feet of Comstar manipulation behind the scenes. Two, Comstar actively starts to suppress technological advances whenever possible. They go out of their way to hunt down and locate any sources of Star League technology and knowledge that they can find and either take them, recover them, and haul them back to Terra or destroy them to prevent them from getting in the hands of the interstellar. This is why the big Starleague library that the Hanston Bond discovers in the Galter campaign in the early years, and later the recovery of the Helm memory core, is such a significant factor. The fact that Comstar was unable to prevent that material from getting into the hands of some pretty savvy people, who then saw the wisdom of sharing and distributing this information, so that eventually all the great houses got a copy or had access to it. And much to the chagrin and consternation of Comstar's leadership. This also includes Comstar actively sending agents out. So whenever a really intelligent, let's say just a real breakthrough is about ready to occur, suddenly a scientist has an accident. The people behind this, motivating this research, might suddenly find themselves in a crisis that they can't control. They just up and gets killed. An accident occurs. The idea is to purposely push the technology level of the intersphere further and further down the pipe. It's on purpose. So this is some of the many things that Comstar is known to have done in order to have been, and really how different the intersphere would have progressed had Comstar truly remained neutral, as initially claimed it was going to be, and or had much earlier on, had the house leadership become wise to this and acted upon it. Just saying. So we get purification, the Brotherhood divided, the Word of Blake. So to secure in his power, the Primus now saw a way to give the loyal disciples of Blake true direction. Pouring to their generals of Jerome Blake, he called and published what he believed was the essence of the founder's thought and vision. For 4 months after the purge, Primus Tomoya presented the first council with the first copies of the Word of Blake, published excerpts from the Blake's journals, selected, noted, and interpreted by Tomoya himself. These writings he presented as proof of Blake's vision of the future of the Intersphere. The Word of Blake spread throughout Comstar and served as Tomoya's purpose in providing the order with a clear path and direct guidance. The book became required reading by all members of Comstar, and its long and sometimes rambling pages, Blake seems to indicate that he had conceived Comstar as a religious order years earlier, an idea that was consistent with Tomoya's vision of the organization as the salvation of humankind, the keeper of truth and vision, or knowledge. It's interesting to note it was only a year ago in 3052 that the original journals of Blake were unsealed for the first time since the era of Primus Tomoya. Upon the mysterious death of Primus Mandio Waterley, the originals revealed that Tomoya was distorted or completely corrupted by the true meaning of Blake's words. Entire passages, including some revealing Blake's impression of Tomoya, are missing so badly damaged as to be incomprehensible. We must now conclude that the Word of Blake is nothing more than a collection of half-truths and exaggerations put together by Conrad Tomoya. Politics, control, power. How do we keep our minions in line with our vision? So this is our master's voice. Some of the following passages are direct quotes from Blake on the fate of mankind. The War of Succession has consumed the fallen Star League and is more horrible than any other before. A new dark age will descend on the Intersphere if the war continues for any length of time. People will be scattered on hundreds of isolated worlds, left to the fates or priceless technology become no more than potent magic in their hands. This endless war has no winner, with all mankind a loser in the dark and dismal end. The Fall 1-1-13. Our mission of Comstar. The Terra's neutrality under our control guarantees no matter what the leaders of the Intersphere do, something of Star League and mankind will survive. Once the great houses have beaten themselves senseless and bloody, we can emerge, offering a new chance to recover what they have tried so hard to destroy. All that saved mankind during the last so-called Dark Age were the churches and religions. These were the havens for humanity's learning, and where they stood alone as beacons in the darkness and foulness that humankind had become to preserve the knowledge and history. If Comstar is to survive the future, it must look to these religions as a blueprint for surviving the wars that are unfolding around us. Salvation forward 18-24. Operations of Comstar, the future of Comstar. I believe the day will come that fighting ends and we can emerge as the saviors. The victories will come for us one world at a time, then one house at a time until we control everything. Mankind will not resist us, but will invite us to help rebuild as we have done with the blessed Terra. All right. So the origin of the Comstar logo. Who were those masked men? Comstar War. Puppet of the premise. So June of 28, yeah, we Dance of Death, Dark Hours, Dark Deeds. So basically history of Comstar, which is, like I said, if you look at all the histories of all the great houses, they're pretty long and deep, and it goes into a lot of backstory. So the Karpov incident, conspiracy of silence, Comstar strikes. What I was saying. Under the free reign of the First Circuit, now extended to Rome, its agents began to systematically assassinate the best scientific minds of the inner sphere. The plan was named Operation Holy Shroud and lasted for almost 5 years. During that time, more than 300 scientists and researchers in the inner sphere perished. Rome made sure that none of these deaths could ever be traced back to Comstar, in most cases making them appear to be accidents. Fires, freak accidents, car wrecks all took their toll on the great minds of the age. The House Lords suspected a plot, but each one believed the threat came from another rival House Lord and never suspecting Comstar. Operation Holy Shroud spilled over into a number of other areas. Universities also became targets, especially those equipped with extensive research laboratories. On the Steiner world of Olympia, for example, Tharked University's Hayden Medical Research Building was burned to the ground, but investigation turned up only a faulty Bunsen burner left unattended as the cause. In the Federated Commonwealth, the University of Sasso McGinnis Engineering Science Lab suffered an explosion in the stored chemical facility, killed 20 people, and leveled the lab. Taken separately, these acts of sabotage seemed unrelated and no one suspecting more than bad luck. A little known element of Operation Holy Shroud dealt with an ongoing threat to Comstar, the continued discovery of Star League catches left behind by the long-departed SLDF. Many of these caches were worthless stockpiles of ammunition that had long since outlived their usefulness. Others consisted of perishables or other expendable items. The caches that caused the greatest problems for Comstar were those containing stockpiles of weapons, technology, even functional battle mechs. Although some of those caches were small, others were vast treasure houses of tech and material. In reading ROM reports of catch recoveries, Primus Karpov grew fearful that one of these stockpiles might provide one or more house governments with HPG technology or allow them to recover some other lost technological marvel. Special ROM teams were assigned throughout the Unisphere to track down all possible Starleague catches and to remove the technology before anyone else could find it. Other teams were assigned to infiltrate the great houses and to sabotage any efforts at recovering the technology from the catches that Comstar could not prevent being discovered. Karpov himself had been a precentor during the Tormora reign and had taken a part in a covert struggle against Comstar in the Free Worlds League, considered the outcome of the Comstar War a lesson learned rather than a failure. 2854, he persuaded the First Circuit to formally approve making a fixed number of acolyte positions available to the scions of most house lines or prominent MechWarrior families. The idea being is that they could bring members of the noble families and wealthy families into Comstar that would give them an edge and or an avenue or conduit to those groups. And to some level, it does work. War renewed. Second succession war nearly runs up by 2864. Your premise Kharkov is still facing some of the same difficulties Comrade Tomoya had confronted earlier in the century. The great leaders, the leaders of great houses all but abandoned the conflict in an effort to rebuild their war-weary states. The premise Karpov to the premise to S to premise Tomoya before him, the cessation of hostilities is the worst possible threat to Comstar. Should peace prevail for too long in the inner prophecies of Jerome Blake may not be fulfilled. See, so they do everything they can under the table to incite and push conflict. The succession wars, in part, are the fault of Comstar. It is what it is. Cursed into Mad, Civil War, Age of Enlightenment, Outboxing the Dragon, Calm before the storm. Explore a premise. The reasonable force. So Andrew Sims was confirmed the ninth premise of Comstar. It's this premise who begins the outbound or the exploration course, starts expanding outwards, and in part trying to find lost human worlds and civilizations left over from pre Star League or from the Star League, but also trying to track down where the Kerensky and the SLDF had gone to. It's one of these ships from the Explorer Corps that accidentally stumbles across the Smoke Jaguar's homeworld that sets off the clan invasion. Just, that's everything in a nutshell in that perspective. The Trippets affair. Yeah, there's enough stuff on the net about the Trippets affair, but needless to say, the idea of a fully equipped Star League era warship getting into the hands of one of the great houses was a pretty bad idea as far as everybody was concerned. In Comstar, probably would be a bad idea, period, too. And so they set out to, once they found out its location, they sent a group, they sent a force out to destroy it. And destroy it they did. Jolly Roger affair. Says here, 2001, the First Circuit saw their control of Preppery as the means of escalating the Third Succession War on the Karita-Steiner front. 4 years earlier, the LCF High Command had requested a slowdown of Karita offensive in order to rest their exhausted troops. Their Archon Alessandro Steiner had arrogantly refused. Many of his commanders on the Karita front used typical snags of communications and supply lines as a pretext to halt the fighting. Basically another way to throw gas on the fire. The arrival of the mysterious dragoons, which really stymied Comstar, and they're trying to find out who these people are, where they came from, and how they got their resources, and their suspicions, the Triple Ob years. New premise inherited the Dragoon problem and the continuing difficulties in manipulating the events of the Third Succession War to Comstar's satisfaction. He also varies a series of critical events during his administration, including the events that led to Archon Katrina Steiner's offer of a ceasefire to every intersphere realm, Hans Davion and Karina Steiner signing the Federal Commonwealth Alliance document, ending hostilities between the two nations. Goes on and on and on, and lots of stuff. The New Avalon Institute of Science. Another location that they really dearly wanted to see destroyed. Regardless of the threat that NASA presented as Comstar, the premise believed that in the end the will of Blake would prevail. Third succession work could be escalated. The Avions would be forced to divert funding to war preparations, and the NASA would be destined to failure. Nasus was a true child of cunning, Hans Davion. He well deserved the name the Fox, which our blessed order would realize too late to avert disaster in years to come. House Steiner and Karita soon followed suit by creating research facilities of their own, although Nasus remained a head and shoulders above the rest. Another great house had Davion's resources to invest in such a center of learning, which is why the other house intelligence agency spends almost as much time trying to infiltrate the Nasus as the agents of Rom. Circles within circles. Strange bedfellows. Look at the door. Fourth Succession War. Fourth Succession War is announced in the midst of wedding reception for Hans Davion and Melissa Steiner on August 28. Comstar hosted the ceremony and the celebration, which was attended by every House Lord, dignitary, important mech warrior family in their sphere. Premise Temple hoped to use the occasion to further convince the House Lords that Comstar was a neutral agent dedicated to peace. Despite Rom's meticulous efforts to prevent the presence of weapons, the gathering Colonel Jamie Wolf arrived at reception bearing swords of late Venerable Tetsura, which he delivered to Takashi Karita along with addressing down for the waste of a valuable soldier and fine man. Wolf also showed his contempt for a blessed order with his actions for weapons had been expressly forbidden at the ceremony. And it goes on into what the theories and how he achieved it, etc., etc., and a bunch of other skullduggery that went down. The watery era, covert operations. One of those Comstar played a big role in negotiating the Ragazel worlds. Sorry, I cannot pronounce that word to save my soul. The province of the Draconis Combine from succeeding and then gaining legitimacy, and was recognized in part by both Comstar, House Karita, and House Steiner, which creates this buffer realm creates another great house within the inner sphere, per se, and this buffer realm between Steiner and the Laren Commonwealth and Draconis Combine. And it's believed that Comstar played a significant role within that. Another thing was that the revelation of the Com Guards comes out. At this point, it's when the clan, this not quite before the clan's invasion, but Comstar starts winning concessions from the various house lords by allowing to establish troops to defend their HPG stations after a fake staged attack occurs on I think it's the Sarna HPG station, and this is what allows them Comstar to put Federate Sons under a communications blackout for the second half of the Fourth Succession War, which really doesn't. It hurts, but it doesn't stop anything. It doesn't, because the Federated Commonwealth, Steiner and Davion have figured out ways to get around it. One is a magic box called a black box that can send hyperspace transmissions in the form of basic text message, like a fax machine kind of thing. So not very sophisticated, but they still function. And using vast numbers of jump ships to create their version of a Pony Express to get information moved around it and allow them to continue the fight against House Leal and Karita. Spread of the Com Guards. The Thomas Merrick's rise to power and real world league owed much to Primus Waterley's new vision and direction of Comstar. When Thomas was injured during an assassination attempt of his father in 3035, ROM agent named Bill, blah, blah, blah. Talk about him. Seeking to expand her ComGuard postings to every house in 3038. Primus Waterley make a diplomatic visit to several Comstar facilities in the Capellan Confederation. During a state meeting with Chancellor Romano Leo, the tension between Comstar and House Leal burst to the surface. Primus Waterley announced an increase of 25% in transmission rates for the Confederation, citing upgrade costs to the HPG network as the cause. Stunned by the announcement, Chancellor Leal accused our order of exploiting her nation's already weakened economy. In a spirit of compromise, Waterley proposed that Comstar maintain the current transmission rates for 25 years in return for the Capellan Confederation permitting Comstar to station battlemech forces at its HPG compounds. Though Romano was not immediately receptive to the suggestion, within 6 months she and Primus had signed a pact allowing the Com Guards to begin posting troops in the Confederation. So what's come out is that Comstar, amongst all this other stuff, has inherited a vast warehouse and a supply network of war machinery from the SDLF when it left on its exodus, as well as acquired more while in its search for finding these catches of left behind Starlink material. So to the point where Comstar can field probably the equivalent of any one house's military in secret. This gives them a huge amount of power. It's also crucial when it comes to putting it into the initial clan invasion later. So we got the War of 3039. One of the reasons House Davion's attempt to bring House Karita to its knees fails is because, once again, Comstar intervenes and provides the Karitans with a lot of war machines, a lot of battle mechs and other equipment, enough so that Theodore Karita is able to form a dozen or so unknown battle mech regiments that House Davion didn't expect them to have, and was able to repair the damage as much quicker to their existing units after the Succession War, the Fourth Succession War's conclusion. This comes as a very shocking surprise to the Davion, the Federated Commonwealth, hence Davion, and puts an end to that war pretty quick. The Clan War then comes into play, and Comstar does a number of tricky things. It starts with trying to negotiate with the clans and to work with them, especially in help monitoring intersphere transmissions and to administer clan-held territories, planets that the clans captured from the intersphere. The Comstar people come in and start running things for them, and then it's through this period of time that Prince Centaur Marshall becomes more and more begins to understand the clans and how they operate much better, and allows them to eventually have the battle that's called, and the conflict for the proxy battle for Terra. Meanwhile, while all this is going on, Premise Wyverly is also trying to come up with this, or putting into motion this plan to basically bring everybody to their knees, with the idea that somehow or another that Comstar, with her at the head, would become the grand leader of the Intersphere. And it doesn't quite happen out the way it goes. And there's a lot of that information in here. So we got the new orders, the new Comstar, a bunch of reformations and changes, the break off of the Word of Blake, organizations, Com Guards and Reformation, Com Guard decorations, various Com Guards. So as of 3055, the deployment of Com Guards is estimated mech strength is 41 regiments plus supporting elements. So you figure 41 regiments, and there's probably another 30 or 40 in between mercenary units and non-command infantry and tank units and things like that. One of the things that makes the Com Guards different from the rest of the Intersphere militaries, except for maybe some of the Federated Suns or the FedCom's RCT units, Regimental Combat Teams, is that the Com Guards from the ground up are integrated. Infantry, tank, or infantry, motorized, mechanized, armor, artillery support, aerospace, battle mech, all of it integrated at the core from the ground up. So when they talk about 41 regiments, well, those regiments are not 100% mech. I'm just saying, right? But they're still potent. And most of their machinery is vintage Starlink technology. This stuff is 300 years plus old, but it's got no mileage or very little mileage on it. And they're equipped with a lot of technology that the rest of the Intersphere, the houses, were unable to produce until recent times. The solar system itself, relations with the Intersphere, talk about the Federated Commonwealth, Components Combine, so on and so forth. Comstar personalities. Work. Now we have this break off of the Word of Blake, which is part of the schism. Things start going south, and it keeps going south. We got some nice little artwork and stuff here, right? Didn't have the light reflecting off of it. Com Guard Infantry, Word of Blake Soldiers, Comstar new battle mechs. Still got some various personalities and stuff here. New battle mechs that are introduced, Comstar's Nexus and Raging. Word of Blake's Grand Crusader. Game supplements. Stuff for adding to the game for mechware. So, that's Comstar, my friends. Like I said, in a way, this is a secret house or a secret organization, a seventh house or sixth house of the Intersphere, with its own goals, its own plans and schemes and drives and support and power. The Intersphere would not be, in game terms as we know it, what it is if it wasn't for these folks. Right? Comstar. Till next time, pricks. This is Rick, and you're.